The next morning at daybreak, Morgiana went to an old cobbler whom she knew to be always ready at his stall, and bidding him good morrow, put a piece of gold into his hand, saying, "Baba Mustafa, you must bring with you your sewing tackle, and come with me, but I must tell you, I shall blindfold you when you come to such a place." Baba Mustafa seemed to hesitate a little at these words. "Oh, replied he, you would have me do something against my conscience, or against my honor?" "God forbid," said Morgiana, putting another piece of gold into his hand, "that I should ask anything that is contrary to your honor. Only come along with me, and fear nothing." Baba Mustafa went with Morgiana, who, after she had bound his eyes with a handkerchief at the place she had mentioned, conveyed him to her deceased master's house, and never unloosed his eyes till he had entered the room where she had put the corpse together. "Baba Mustafa," said she, "you must make haste and sew the parts of this body together, and when you have done, I will give you another piece of gold." After Baba Mustafa had finished his task, she blindfolded him again, gave him the third piece of gold as she had promised, and recommending secrecy to him, carried him back to the place where she first bound his eyes, pulled off the bandage, and let him go home, but watched him that he returned toward his stall, till he was quite out of sight, for fear he should have the curiosity to return and dodge her. She then went home. Morgiana, on her return, warmed some water to wash the body, and at the same time Alibaba perfumed it with incense, and wrapped it in the burying clothes with the accustomed ceremonies. Not long after the proper officer brought the bier, and when the attendants of the mosque, whose business it was to wash the dead, offered to perform their duty, she told them it was done already. Shortly after this the imam and the other ministers of the mosque arrived. Four neighbors carried the corpse to the burying ground, following the imam, who recited some prayers. Ali Baba came after with some neighbors, who often relieved the others in carrying the bier to the burying ground. Morgiana, a slave to the deceased, followed in the procession, weeping, beating her breast, and tearing her hair. Qasim's wife stayed at home mourning, uttering lamentable cries with the women of the neighborhood, who came, according to custom, during the funeral, and joining their lamentations with hers filled the quarter far and near with sounds of sorrow. In this manner Qasim's melancholy death was concealed and hushed up between Ali Baba, his widow, and Morgiana his slave, with so much contrivance that nobody in the city had the least knowledge or suspicion of the cause of it. 3 or 4 days after the funeral, Ali Baba removed his few goods openly to his sister's house, in which it was agreed that he should in future live, but the money he had taken from the robbers he conveyed thither by night. As for Qasim's warehouse, he entrusted it entirely to the management of his eldest son. While these things were being done, the 40 robbers again visited their retreat in the forest. Great, then, was their surprise to find Qasim's body taken away, with some of their bags of gold. "We are certainly discovered," said the captain. "The removal of the body and the loss of some of our money plainly shows that the man whom we killed had an accomplice, and for our own lives' sake we must try to find him. What say you, my lads?" All the robbers unanimously approved of the captain's proposal. "Well," said the captain, "one of you, the boldest and most skillful among you, must go into the town, disguised as a traveler and a stranger, to try if he can hear any talk of the man whom we have killed, and endeavor to find out who he was, and where he lived. This is a matter of the first importance, and for fear of any treachery I propose that whoever undertakes this business without success, even though the failure arises only from an error of judgment, shall suffer death." Without waiting for the sentiments of his companions, one of the robbers started up, and said, "I submit to this condition, and think it an honor to expose my life to serve the troop." After this robber had received great commendations from the captain and his comrades, he disguised himself so that nobody would take him for what he was, and taking his leave of the troop that night, he went into the town just at daybreak. He walked up and down, till accidentally he came to Baba Mustafa's stall, which was always open before any of the shops. Baba Mustafa was seated with an awl in his hand, just going to work. The robber saluted him, bidding him good morrow, and perceiving that he was old, said, "Honest man, you begin to work very early. Is it possible that one of your age can see so well? I question, even if it were somewhat lighter, whether you could see to stitch." "You do not know me," replied Baba Mustafa, "for old as I am, I have extraordinary good eyes, and you will not doubt it when I tell you that I sewed the body of a dead man together in a place where I had not so much light as I have now." "A dead body!" exclaimed the robber, with affected amazement. "Yes, yes," answered Baba Mustafa. "I see you want me to speak out, but you shall know no more." The robber felt sure that he had discovered what he sought. He pulled out a piece of gold, and putting it into Baba Mustafa's hand, said to him, "I do not want to learn your secret, though I can assure you you might safely trust me with it. The only thing I desire of you is to show me the house where you stitched up the dead body." "If I were disposed to do you that favor," replied Baba Mustafa, "I assure you I cannot. I was taken to a certain place, whence I was led blindfold to the house, and afterward brought back in the same manner. You see, therefore, the impossibility of my doing what you desire." "Well," replied the robber, "you may, however, remember a little of the way that you were led blindfold. Come, let me blind your eyes at the same place. We will walk together, perhaps you may recognize some part, and as every one should be paid for his trouble, here is another piece of gold for you. Gratify me in what I ask you." So saying, he put another piece of gold into his hand. The two pieces of gold were great temptations to Baba Mustafa. He looked at them a long time in his hand, without saying a word, but at last he pulled out his purse and put them in. "I cannot promise," said he to the robber, "that I can remember the way exactly, but since you desire, I will try what I can do." At these words Baba Mustafa rose up, to the great joy of the robber, and led him to the place where Morgiana had bound his eyes. "It was here," said Baba Mustafa, "I was blindfolded, and I turned this way." The robber tied his handkerchief over his eyes, and walked by him till he stopped directly at Qasim's house, where Alibaba then lived. The thief, before he pulled off the band, marked the door with a piece of chalk, which he had ready in his hand, and then asked him if he knew whose house that was, to which Baba Mustafa replied that as he did not live in that neighborhood, he could not tell.